So this is the next video in a collection of stories that are telling about the death of my son. This one's going to be focused on the night after the day that he had died. Um, my wife and I, after my parents had left, went to our bedroom to try to get some sleep, and there was no sleep coming. It was by far the worst night of my life. I didn't want to sleep because I was scared of what I'd dream, but I needed to sleep because I was physically, emotionally, and spiritually just exhausted. Um, I felt horribly awful. There was no peace whatsoever, and sleep just wasn't coming. My sister, who lives in Arizona, the moment she had gotten news of what had happened, she immediately got in her car and started driving to California from Arizona so that she could be there for us. So we knew she was on the way, but we figured we'd just see her the next morning, so forth. Um, Sometime after my parents left, I was talking to my wife and we were having a conversation. And to kind of preface this conversation, I need to tell a little bit of backstory, so I apologize in advance for those of you that are not gamers. I was a pretty avid player of the game World of Warcraft prior to my son's death. I would be in raids with a guild, and in essence, what it is 3 nights a week for 3 hours each day. I would meet with 24 people across the country, and we would kill fictional monsters together. It was something I was very passionate about, that I enjoyed, and I even remember one night where my son Liam was crying in the background, and my wife was trying to take care of him by herself because I was playing this game, and I started talking to one of the guild members through the headphones, and the guild leader heard my son crying in the background, and in a joking manner, he said, "Man, that's real dedication." And I remember at the time thinking that it was kind of a badge of honor, that, yeah, I'm that dedicated to this group of people and helping them be successful. And it seems pretty sheepish to view it that way nowadays, but at the time, it was something I was really proud of. Like, we worked really hard, we were doing what we needed to. Um, so after my son's death, we're trying to go to sleep, and my wife and I are talking, and I said to her, I was like, I just need to be honest with you. Um, I'm going to be playing a lot of World of Warcraft over the next couple weeks because I'm going to need something to just check out of and just to not be thinking about this. Um, and she turned and looked at me, and tears welling up in her eyes, and she said, "Please, please don't do that." And I was a little surprised because I assumed she would understand that that's what I needed. And I'm like, "Well, why?" And she said, I can't go through this alone. And if you go into that, I'm going to be suffering through this alone. I'm not going to have any help. I'm going to be on my own, and it's going to destroy us. And I can't do that. Um, and the Holy Spirit hit me pretty hard at that moment. And I came to realize in that moment that that was not the answer. And so I said, okay, I'm done with World of Warcraft. And you'd have to talk to her to get the full story, but that was kind of a miracle to her because I was so addicted to the game that she figured I'd never give up on it. Um, and so I did. And from that day, I was like, hey, I'm done with the rating. I'm done with doing that. And we made a commitment that night that we were going to grieve together, whatever it may be. We were going to find commonalities that we could do together that would allow us to grieve together. And if I'm being completely honest, I think that's one of the biggest things we could have done to save our marriage, because I think if I had sunk into World of Warcraft the way I wanted to, I don't think we would still be together now. We might not even have our son Silsby if that were the case. But fortunately, God, through the Holy Spirit, directed us in the proper way to grieve. Um, so later in the night, it's getting to be probably about 3 or 4 in the morning, and it was just dark in that house. Um, there was just this evil feeling throughout the whole house. There was no peace, there was no comfort. Um, I just was in complete despair, reaching the point where I just didn't care anymore. Um, it's the darkest my life has ever been. And there was a moment where I was sitting there so encompassed in the darkness, feeling like this might be the end. Like, what's the point in living if this is what life is going to be? Uh, and I mean, we still had 3 hours till daylight, and so it was a pretty hopeless moment. And I remember right at that moment, I got a text on the phone, and it was my sister from Arizona. And she said, "I'm coming over. I hope you're not offended. but I need to be there. And reality was is I think for a couple hours now my wife and I knew that we needed company, and my parents had said if you need us ask, but we hadn't, because as much as we knew we needed it, we also just didn't have the strength in us to ask for that help. And so in a lot of ways it was a relief to us when my sister didn't give us the option, because if she had texted and said, hey, do you want me to come over, we would have been like, no, we'll see you tomorrow morning. She didn't. She said, I'm coming over. And she came over, my parents came with her, and we sat and talked the rest of the night. We talked about Liam. My sister, since she lived in Arizona, she had never actually got to meet Liam. She'd only seen videos and things like that. And so we told her all the stories. We told him all about his life. We told him everything that we could remember. And it felt good. It felt good to just honor and remember my son and the things that made him who he was. I remember in particular as we talked that we all kind of realized that there was some stuff that he was doing that was not typical for his age, for a 3-month-old. And I want to be careful how I say this is not me saying that he was some super gifted, amazing kid or whatever. I personally believe that God knew that we weren't going to have him more than 3 months, and so he blessed us to be able to see what he could have been like at 6 months by allowing him to do things at 3 months that a 3-month-old shouldn't be able to do. It was kind of one of those little tender mercies so that we could have a little more interaction with him, a little more connection prior to him leaving us. But we sat for hours talking about Liam, telling the stories, showing the videos, looking at the pictures. Fortunately, because he was our miracle baby after 6-7 years of infertility, we'd taken tons of pictures and tons of videos. And so we had a lot to remember him by. But I'll tell you right now, my sister deciding to come saved us that night, because I was reaching a level of despair and just depression that I wasn't going to be able to pull out of. And her coming at that time was what pulled me out of it and got me to be able to go. And it was the exact right thing at the exact right time. And even though at the moment I probably wouldn't have admitted that, I can admit that now. Like, her coming was so essential. And that helped us get through the night. That helped us to survive that evening, because when it first happens, it's literally survival minute to minute. It's like, am I going to be able to get through the next minute? Am I going to be able to get through the next 30 minutes, the next hour, the next day? And eventually, some of that dissipates away and you become more equipped to be able to get through things on a daily basis. But in the beginning, it's just trying to survive. And in that night and in that moment, my sister's influence is what got us through that night. I also think it was really helpful for my parents, because I think there was still lingering guilt with them. Even though they knew there was nothing they could have done, there was still that feeling of that it was on their watch. And so to be able to have them there and to be able to have them share in the stories as well, I think helped them. Ultimately, everybody was just putting our needs first in that moment. And that was exactly what we needed, and it's the reason we survived that night. The next video I'm going to be talking about kind of the week after that night, and I'm going to be talking about all the different ways that different people helped us, because there was lots of different ways that people helped us, and all of them were needed, and all of them were different. Kind of my focus in that video is going to be to help people who want to know, how do I help somebody who's had this happen to them? How do I help them? It's going to be to give different possible ways to do that, because there were a lot of people who helped in a lot of different ways. Thanks again for watching this. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope it's helpful. Again, if you have any questions or you want me to go into more depth on anything, just send me a comment. I'll be happy to do that. Thank you for your time. Bye.